For information about investing in character-led companies, please visit www.rocinvestments.com and join the growing number of investors choosing to make character a priority when investing their money.
Welcome to another episode of Return on Character podcast with me, your host, Dan Cooper, founder and CEO of Rock Investments, an investment strategy that invests in the character of public company CEOs. We're honored, honestly, to have Dave Durocher on the podcast today, and I'm gonna save an introduction from me, only because I really don't believe I could do it justice. But I will say that he's the executive director of the Other Side Academy in Utah, Salt Lake City area. And Dave's got a pretty epic story along with those that he works with every day. Dave, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Dan. It's an honor to be here. I look forward to our conversation and just glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time. I mean, seriously, it's really important, I think, for a lot of us to understand the things that you work on every day. And so if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Other Side Academy. We can start there.
So my name is Dave Durocher. I'm the executive director with the Other Side Academy. And I haven't always been the executive director for the Other Side Academy. I have been since we opened in 2015. But prior to that, I was a hardcore drug addict for well over 27 years. And when I say hardcore drug addict, sometimes people misconceive. When I say hardcore, I mean that to the core. I wasn't the guy that smoked a joint on a Friday night and had a beer Saturday and went to work Monday. I was literally out of the workforce for decades. Started at a young age, drinking, stealing alcohol out of dad's bottle and replacing it with water because he'd never find out, right? And then, of course, he'd come home from work, have a drink, and not get the desired effect he was looking for. And he quickly realized I was. Smoking pot around 12 and right around the age of 14, did my first line of cocaine. And, everybody I think can remember what it's like to navigate your teenage years. But when I did cocaine, Dan, I thought I found God. I no longer felt the way I was feeling, insecure, less than, I didn't belong, all of those things. Coke gave me that. I became super kid, right? And I'd be in my room chopping up my lines and sliding a little mirror underneath the Hitachi stereo and, pretending like I'm doing homework while I'm snorting Coke. And, when mom and dad found out, they did everything they possibly could to try to stop me, right? Counselors, doctors, therapists, but I didn't have the problem. You did. But it was expensive. And I became just a complete thief. I was stealing from everybody. I was breaking into neighbors' homes. And back then it was, early 80s, I'm stealing cameras and VCRs and jewelry and cash, whatever I could get my hands on. And it was house after house after house. And of course, I got in trouble for it, but I was so young, they didn't do anything, right? Got in my dad's wallet, right? And got the safe combination, got into his safe and literally stole thousands and thousands of dollars before he realized I was getting in. That's just to name a few things. I was on a bike once going through a drive-through at a bank, right? With a check I forged of my dad's, right? Of course, I got caught in that drive-through on the bicycle. That's how bad it got, right? So just to give you some context of what it was like. And I would go to school, right? And I would sit in class, history, math, whatever it was. And I'd have a vial, this is chapstick, not a vial of cocaine, but I'd have a vial of cocaine in my pocket. And when the teacher wasn't looking, I'd pour the Coke between the pages of whatever book I had open, history, math, English, whatever it was. And then I'd take a big pen and I'd pull it apart. And when the teacher wasn't looking, I'd lean over in class and snort Coke in school. That's how bad it got. Graduated from high school because school wasn't hard. I didn't really study much, but I got through it. Didn't graduate with, some of them were D's, but anyway, I graduated. But when I graduated from high school, I went from cocaine to methamphetamine. And that's really when the wheels fell off. And make no mistake about it, they were already wobbly, spare included, right? Things were really bad. But when I found meth, it was cheaper, it lasted longer, I didn't do coke anymore, and I stopped stealing for it because I started to deal it. Now, never set out to be a drug dealer at all. I didn't like shake hands with you, Dan, when you graduated and you're going off to college. I'm going to go deal drugs. That's not how it happened. It's just one thing led to another. I'd buy some, sell a little, buy some, just to support my habit. Buy a 16, sell a couple quarter grams, buy an 8-ball, sell a couple quarter grams. And I didn't realize I had an entrepreneurial gene in me, right? And pretty soon I'm buying more and selling more and buying more, and I'm making some money. And I thought, hey, this works, right? Pretty screwed up thinking, but it started getting out of hand, and I was buying much larger amounts, right, and selling it. And I was making some money, right? I was supporting myself. I've got the girls, I've got the drugs, I've got the power. It was
Were
that.
you living at home at the time still?
No. I had moved out, and I, had apartments. Most of it was living with other women. When you got the drugs and the money, right, women want you to live there that are getting high, right? So that's kind of how I did it. I didn't have to rent anything in my own name. And over the years, I was just bouncing from girl to girl to girl. Had some kids that I didn't raise. I was never a dad. I had kids. Heck, I forgot this part. I got my high school sweetheart pregnant when she was a sophomore. We had an abortion. Got her pregnant again when she was a junior. And we had my first son, who's now 38 years old, when I was a senior in high school. So now I'm a drug addict, full blown. I'm getting girls pregnant, right? Having children in high school. And that's a conversation, a whole nother conversation outside of, my story, that we'd have to really dig into about how to mitigate that, because it destroyed my life. The drugs, the porn, all that stuff at that young age. But anyway, let's fast forward to I'm dealing drugs, and with that comes protection. So now I've got guns involved and more guns, and I really got an infinity for guns, right? That was kind of my hobby, taking them all in on trade, selling them. And, I'm not buying them legally. They're all stolen guns from God knows where. And I had guns in every room in the apartment, right? And I'm dealing drugs on a large scale, and then I start getting arrested. Went to prison for the first time, and my first prison term was 2 years. Went to prison, got out. The day I got out, I was back to selling drugs and getting high. I didn't go check in at parole, nothing like that. Literally, the day I got out, I was on my way back. So 2-year prison term, got out for 59 days. Went back to prison for a 5-year term, got out for 60 days. So at least I'm staying out longer, right? I'm getting better at this. Got busted again, went back to prison on a 6-year prison term, got out, got busted again, went to prison on a 10-year term. So it was 2-year term, 5-year term, 6-year term, 10-year term. Did about 15 years on those 20-something years worth of terms, right? And in the state of California, it's pretty interesting. I live in Utah now, but I go all over the country visiting jails and prisons all over the world. Just got back from London visiting prisons. California is unique. I call it high school with knives. It's Sureños and Norteños, Southern Hispanic, Northern Hispanic, Mexican gang members. You have Bloods and Crips. You have white power, and you have skinheads. And we're all fighting each other over stuff that doesn't belong to us, over respect, as if any of us deserve it when you're in prison. But man, do you demand it. We don't deserve it, but man, do we demand it. We can't even respect ourselves. A whole nother conversation. So I'm doing time in California. I'm navigating that whole world, right? And I'm starting to, get sleeved up, and all my tattoos are prison ink. All the political tattoos, you have to earn them, right? And in order to earn them, you've got to do some pretty terrible things on the inside. So I'm getting involved in the prison politics. And then, pretty soon I'm going to prison and I've got the keys to the yard. I'm running the yards, right? I'm shot calling. So then when the drugs come in, they got to go through me. When we're going to have a riot, I have to make that decision. And I started to feel like I was somebody. You with me? I'm about something. And then when I parole and come back, Durocher's on the yard. They'd shoot me my coffee, my hygiene, my soups, and then I felt like, man, I've got a reputation. I'm Dave Durocher. I'm in prison. I hurt people or get hurt, win, lose, or draw, right? This is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And I had really sank to the bottom, right? But I didn't realize that then. I thought I was about something because I had this reputation. Well, how do you get a reputation in prison? You get it by doing the wrong thing. And the more wrong you do, the greater your reputation. Problem is, I had no character, not an iota of character. But man, did I think I had a reputation. And if you build a reputation on doing the wrong thing, how do you build character? On doing the right thing. Now, we'll get there in a minute, but I had no idea then. I was just full of myself, drinking my own Kool-Aid, thinking I was the shit. Can I say that? Thinking I was.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want here. Authenticity is not just it's required. So have at it.
So 4 prison terms in the state of California, navigating that whole political mess. Get out after my 10-year prison sentence, and the day I get out of prison, I'm on my way back again. You think I'd learned, right? Pick up a few pounds. I'm selling dope. I'm in Huntington Beach, California. I'm in a house with a girl that I always go back to. She was always kind of like a safe place to land, right? Mom and dad had the house. She lived there. She's a drug addict. And I would go over there and I could sleep there. I could eat there. I could wash my clothes. It was that kind of thing. And I'm upstairs in a room and I'm looking out the window, right? Upstairs, I'm looking out the window and I see a helicopter really, really, really high in the sky and it's just sitting there. Now, usually helicopters are floating around the city just protecting everybody, right? This thing is way, way up there and it's just sitting there. An hour or two later, I'm done. I got everything packaged up. I've made my calls. I'm going to go make some deliveries. I look out the window. That helicopter's still sitting way the hell up there. Leave the house, get in my car, and take off. The cops were everywhere. Huntington Beach PD, Fountain Valley, Garden Grove, and Parole. Come to find out later, those are the 4 agencies. I leave, and the sirens, the cop cars, and I didn't stop. I told myself and all my friends, if we want to call them that, colleagues, that I'm never going back to prison. I know when I get busted again, this next term is going to be really, really long. So I took them on a high-speed chase. I'm on Magnolia. I'm headed south. I'm trying to get to Hamilton, the bridge in Costa Mesa, so I can throw everything out the window. I'm heading south on Magnolia. I'm displacing vehicles. I have total wanton disregard for public safety. The helicopter had come down now. It's shining its light. It's following the car with its spotlight on the car. The cacophony of sound between the sirens and the commands to pull over were really hectic. It was a harried moment trying to just navigate all that, knowing, oh my goodness, I am done, right? As I get closer to Atlantic and I'm going to make a left, there's a couple cop cars that had kind of blocked the intersection. And I have a decision to make, Dan. Do I stop? And I did a TED Talk that talks about this, and you can find it online. But as I get close to that roadblock, I have a decision to make. Do I stop and do I let them arrest me? Or do I go through that roadblock, use my car as battering ram and hope that they kill me? And I opted for B. I wanted to die. When I say that, what I mean by that is I didn't want to live, right? I didn't want to live the rest of my life in prison. So I took a chance, and human nature is funny. As I approach that roadblock and use my car as a battering ram, I'm hoping they kill me, but I hunker down at the same time. That's just kind of how, to protect myself. I make the left-hand turn. The cop closest to me did the pursuit intervention technique, the pit maneuver, spun me out of control up on a kind of an embankment at a strip mall. They pulled me out of that vehicle at gunpoint, and they commenced to give me one of the worst beatings I've ever taken in my life. The last thing I remember hearing was, stop, we're going to kill him. They've got me out. I'm already in handcuffs, and they're working me over. And I'll be honest with you, Dan, I had it coming. If I was law enforcement at that time and that moment with me, I'd have done the same thing. I risked everybody's life. The helicopter, the cops, the public. I put everybody's life at risk with no regard, just wanton disregard. I'm not saying what they did was right, but man, I had that ass beaten coming. So get arrested, go to jail. And when I go to court the first time, I'm looking at 29 years. That's a long time. So I'm doing the math. I'm 38, 29, you do the math, right? As I fought my case in the county jail for a long time, some of the ancillary charges had fallen off, some of the petty stuff, right? It landed on 22. And Judge Pacheco at that time was resolute in his resolve, if you will. And he said, Mr. Durocher, whether you plead out or whether you go to trial, you're getting 22 years. There is no deal. You're going back to prison for the rest of your life. So I continue to fight my case from the Orange County Jail, going to court, firing public defenders because we could do that. I'm playing the game, right? I want the visits. I want my girl to come to jail and visit me so I can convince her to wait for me because I'm so worth waiting for, right? Because I have so much to offer a relationship. I'm playing the game. I want the canteen. I want the homies in the jail, right? So I'm just playing the game. But at the same time, I'm trying to get that down to something manageable, like 15 years. Had they offered me 15 years, Dan, I wouldn't be here right now. I would have went back to prison. I would have probably gotten out a few years ago and went right back to the same lifestyle. So I am so grateful that judge did not acquiesce until. So while I'm fighting my case, right, I realized that the judge is not playing games. I wrote a place called Delancey Street. Delancey Street headquarters is in San Francisco. There's 5 of them in the country. The second largest is Los Angeles. That's the one I wrote. Delancey Street's a 2-year re-education facility for the most lost among us. It's the only place on the planet that a judge would send somebody like me in lieu of or instead of prison. So I wrote them, they interviewed me, and they accepted me. And when I went to court and presented it to the judge, he basically said, "Are you crazy? You are not Delancey Street material. I will never send you to Delancey Street. You are getting 22 years. Get out of my courtroom." So, of course, back to the holding cell, back on the bus, back to jail. And here's what I ended up doing. I wasn't busy in my cell in the evenings, so I decided to write the judge a letter. And I did. I actually wrote him on legal pad, 4 pages long, front and back. I told him my life story, Aaron. And I said, "Your Honor, I'm guilty. I'm pleading guilty right now to everything you're charging me with. There, you've got my plea on paper. But I'm also going to make another plea. Would you please give me the opportunity to go to Delancey Street? What do you have to lose? I've been to prison 4 times already. It didn't work. And I realize it's not designed to. I'm not putting that on you, but I've been to prison 4 times already. I'm eventually going to get out and probably come back before you again. If you send me to Delancey Street and I get kicked out or I split, Your Honor, you can lock me up for the rest of my life, plus whatever new charges I've got. You got me. Or you send me to Delancey Street and I complete it and I change my life. The next time you see me, it's because I'm coming back to say thank you." 6 weeks later, I go to court. And I don't know if you remember what a phone booth looks like, but I'm in a metal cage, smaller than a phone booth, jumpsuit, ankle irons, waist irons, handcuffs, in a little cage like an animal. And that's who I had become at that time in my life. So I'm right where I belong. Make no mistake about it. I'm accountable. They should have me in a cage. I should have went to prison for the rest of my life. But Judge Pacheco said, "Mr. Durocher, against my better judgment, I'm going to give you the opportunity of a lifetime. I'm going to allow you to go to Delancey Street. You're going to plead guilty verbally in my courtroom now like you did on paper to your charges, and you're going to sign a deal for 22 years. When you get kicked out of Delancey Street or when you leave Delancey Street, I've got you for the rest of your life. Get out of my courtroom." I'll never forget it, Dan. I left jail at Lacey. I go outside. It took them 36 hours to release me because release thought it was a mistake. They had to wait the next morning for the courts to open up to make sure. There's no way they're going to let this guy out to go to some program, but they did. I left that jail, went out in the parking lot, jumped in a girl's car, drove across the street to the block, which is a mall, and we read Bible verses for a while. It's a joke. Not quite what we were doing in the car. We get done. She drives me back to the jail. I jump in my girlfriend's car. Now, my parents had come all the way from Las Vegas to pick me up. They were right down the street at a hotel waiting for me to get released to get me from the jail to Delancey Street, and I left them hanging. Jumped in this girl's car, and we took off. A couple hours later, it was like God speaking to me. "Hey, stupid. If you don't get over to Delancey Street now, you're going back to prison for the rest of your life." I called my mom. I've never heard this sound before. She was screaming and crying at the same time. It was difficult to discern what she was saying. But basically what she said was, "You have 15 minutes to get back to this parking lot so your dad and I can take you to Delancey Street, or we're leaving and you're on your own." I got to my parents. They took me to Delancey Street. Delancey Street is a 2-year program. I stayed in a 2-year program for 8.5 years. Think about that for a second. Most people go to 30, 60, 90-day treatment facilities. I stayed in a 2-year program for 8.5 years. Why? Because I could. That's the beauty of a therapeutic community. That's the beauty of the model. It's not based on funding. The government doesn't dictate when you leave, which is why it works so well, because the government has nothing to do with it. So I go there. I stayed 2 years to beat my 22-year prison sentence. Then I stayed.
Let me just ask one question.
Yeah.
So when you wrote to Delancey Street for admission and went through the whole process, were you just playing? Like, were you not serious at the time? Did you see this as more of a tactic?
So you ask a good question, Dan. Make no mistake about it. When I knew I wrote Delancey Street before my 10-year prison sentence. They came and they interviewed me and they didn't accept me. In that interview, I didn't know why, but now I remember the first interview. In that interview, all I talked about was the guns, the drugs, the chaos, the mayhem, the violence. That interviewer saw right through me and he left me there and did not accept me. And I had to go do that 10-year prison sentence. He saved my life. I was nowhere near ready. Never once did I ask for help. Now after the 10-year sentence, now the helicopter, the chase, now I'm back in jail. I write him again. They did interview me. And when that interviewer was leaving, I was handcuffed and I'm knocking on the glass and I'm begging for help, tears running down my face. I wanted help. I had no idea what it looked like. I'm writing Delancey Street because I know it's the only place that can get me out of this mess. Was I writing them to truly change? Hell no. Was I writing them to get out of a 22-year prison sentence? Hell yes. Thankfully, that judge made it very clear. I knew I could not leave Delancey Street or I would have went back to prison forever. Having that anchor, that albatross around my shoulders anchored me there, right?
But you almost missed it. You almost didn't go because you almost just blew the whole thing. If your mother,
these girls, and I call them hood rats, right? I'm running out there, I'm having fun with these chicks, and I almost didn't go. And that should tell you something. Drugs were never my problem. Drugs are not anybody's problem. I'm so sick and tired of hearing people how we deal with drugs. Drugs weren't my problem. My thinking was, I've got a 22-year prison sentence, and I'm such a needy little creature that I'm jumping in these girls' car for 30 seconds of pleasure and damn near throwing away my opportunity of a lifetime. I did not write Delancey Street to change. I wrote Delancey Street to change the address, to get me from Theo Lacey jail to there. However, Delancey Street at that time was such a powerful organization. It worked. I got there and I had to stay 2 years to beat that 22-year prison sentence, which I did, and then stayed 6.5 more because I fell in love with the process. And I was there for about 2.5 years when Mimi Silver, the president, came down, and she sat there. We had a meeting, and she looked at me. She said, Dave, how much longer will you stay? I said, I don't know, Mimi. I just gave a 3rd year. How much longer will you stay? I'll never forget this conversation. I said, Mimi, I don't know. What are you asking me? She said, will you stay 5 more years? Think about that. This is a program, right? And I thought to myself, 5 more years. I'm doing the math in my head. But then I thought about my life prior to Delancey Street, how effed up it was, how much damage I had done, how many people I had hurt, how I just tore at the fabric of the community. I mean, I got to that place internally, right? I realized who I'd become. And I said, yeah, I'll stay. She looked at me, she says, you sure? I said, are you? I had no idea that she was going to ask me shortly after that to run the Los Angeles facility. 250 residents living on property, 15 vocational training schools that generated all of the revenue. We generated millions of dollars every year and saved countless lives with that model. It was hands down the best decision I ever made in my life, not just in going, but in staying. That staying piece, I can't emphasize it enough, nor can I articulate or adequately describe how important being able to stay as long as you need to is. So 8.5 years.
Dave, help me understand. So you get there. How did your mind begin to reform? What were some moments in that process that you started developing a certain new ruler for behavior, new ruler for right and wrong, new ruler for character, developing character inside? Like, how did the program start to grow that in you? Because, it sounded like, your brain was affected by the drugs so early on, so its inability to really absorb or go in the direction you probably needed to go was repressed or messed up early. How did you start reforming your mind?
That's a really good question, Dan. Thank you for asking that. Delancey Street is a community of healthy living. And when I got there, right, I'd been around a long time, done a lot of time in and out of jails. And when I got there, there was I was number 276. So there's 275 people. I'm number 276 the day I get there on the population sheet. So there was a lot of people in Delancey Street when I got there that I knew. I'm like, holy shit. I thought you were in prison for life. Jeff, I thought you were dead. Steve, my God, it's good to see you. However, they were different people. They didn't talk the way they used to. There was no homie this, homie that. They were different people. They carried themselves differently. They dressed differently. And I thought, I'll be damned, what's going on here? Perceived similarities. Here's some people I knew and people I did dirt with that are completely transformed. So I said, help me get where you're at. Throughout that process, they kicked my ass.
So you had examples that you saw it was possible.
Yes. It was so important to see people that I had known, right, in the lifestyle that had changed. When I saw that, I thought, if they can do it, I can do it. It wasn't a doctor or a counselor or a therapist sitting me down going, okay, Dave, how you feeling today? And what does that make you feel like? And are you, do you need some medication? It wasn't that kind of party. My God, that would have killed me. That stuff didn't work for me. I needed my peers to kick my ass. I needed my peers to tell me the truth about who I'd become. I needed to go into those group settings and sit down and have people just like me that are farther removed put their foot in my southern exposure and shake it around, right? Make me really uncomfortable. Tell me what a bold-faced liar I had become, what a cheater I had become, what a violent monster I had become. We live in a country right now where we're so deathly afraid to tell people the truth. Oh my God, we can't say that. It'll hurt their feelings. Do you think I gave a shit about anybody's feelings when I was moving guns and drugs? Don't be concerned about my feelings. Tell me the truth. That's why Delancey Street works so well. I was told the truth about me. And then I go to bed, I call it taking it to the pillow, right? Holy shit, they're right. That is me. The next game, Tuesday night, holy shit, they're right. That is me. Slowly but surely, they started chipping away at all those rough edges. And thankfully, it wasn't state funded, right? Where I had to leave on a particular day when the money ran out. I got to stay as long as I needed to. I endured all that harsh feedback. And slowly but surely, I started to grow up. I can sum up a TC in one word: maturation. I get there at 38. I'm living like I'm 12. You got to close that gap between your chronological age and your emotional age. And Delancey Street helped me do it because I stayed for 8.5 years. And when I finally left, I knew how to tell the truth. I knew how to be accountable. I know what integrity means. I'm the same person in every room. I'm unapologetically me, right? But I do the right thing for the right reasons. I help other people. I stayed in that organization and I ran it for the last 5 years that I was there. Multi-million-dollar organization, Dan, and I ran it for free. You couldn't have paid me to do it. Let me explain to you why. Just so happens I have this at my office. What is that right there?
It's a justice scale.
So when I got to Delancey Street, I couldn't tip them any farther. This is all the shit I'd done, all the people I'd hurt, all the damage I'd done to people. They were tipped like this. The only way I could get to a better place was to help people, help people, help people, do interviews, get people out of jail, help people, help people. And at 4 years in Delancey Street, my soul told me I could go live my life outside the same way I'm living it here, that I had done as much good as I had done bad. The soul will tell you, right? I knew I'd balanced the scales, and then I stayed 4 more years and tipped them in the other direction. And when I left Delancey Street, I had no more guilt. I had no more remorse. I didn't feel bad. I literally helped hundreds, if not thousands of people get from where I was to where I had gotten. The soul is the scorekeeper. People don't pay attention to it. And when you go to a 30, 60, or 90-day model, you do not have enough time to balance the scales. And balancing the scales is the bone for our wounds. I did so much damage to people, Dan, so much damage. I hurt my families, my kids that I didn't raise, my spouses that I completely abused, innocent people, stuffing them in trunks of cars, guns in their mouths. I did all kinds of things that should have got me life sentences that probably impacted those people for a long, long time going forward. I owed it being able to stay in an organization where I could help transform other people's lives, transformed mine. And I realized something. I love people. I love doing good, right? It was always in me. I just needed to hone that skill, if you will. And I fell in love with helping people. And at about 8.5 years, I decided to leave Delancey Street. I wanted to go. I was 46. It's time I go practice what I've learned. I need to put a life together, right? I leave Delancey Street. I get a job at Burkich, B-R-K-I-C-H, Burkich Construction in Southern California. I met the owner of that company. He did a project at my facility. I'll never forget him. And he said, Dave, when you're done here, I want to hire you. When I was done, he put me in the Teamsters Union. His name is Bob Burkich. Paid the Teamster dues. I had my commercial license. I was doing underground pipeline construction, and I was making almost $30 an hour. That might not sound like a lot, but the last time I had worked, minimum wage was like $6.50. It had been since the 80s, right? So here I am making like $30 an hour. I'm like, holy shit. I thought, man, if I hit, it's only $1,200 a week if you work 40 hours. That's not a lot of money in Southern California, but it was a lot of money to me to be earning legally. A couple things happened. I hated my job. Construction sucks. I don't want to be in a hole putting pipe in. I don't want to haul heavy equipment. I missed people. Anyway, with all that being said, I then went to Bakken in North Dakota, into the oil fields. A bunch of Delancey Street graduates were up there, and they were showing me their check stubs, right? I'm like, holy shit, what are you guys making? Flew up to North Dakota, landed in Williston, got off the plane, had 5 jobs the same day. You have to have a criminal record and a pulse. You're hired, right? Up there was, I refer to it as the Wild Wild West. But here's the thing: I slept on an air mattress on the floor for the first month at my buddy's apartment. I worked 31 days in a row and made $17,500 in 1 month legally. Cops can't take it from me this time. Stayed there for 5 months, made a bunch of money, threw it in the bank, and I realized 2 things: that making money is fun. It always has been, right? Especially when it's legal and the cops can't take it. But saving lives is rewarding. I had a hole in my heart, but now I had a chunk of money in the bank that was legal. I made it. I'm good. I'm not using drugs. Everything's life's good. I came back to Southern California, and I wanted to get back into the people business, but Delancey Street doesn't hire people. You have to be a resident there, so they don't have paid positions. Started going to all these small programs doing presentations, 30-day program here, 60-day program here, just doing presentations to their residents, staying connected to that community. And then a God shot happened. Joseph Grenny, our founder, Tim Stay, our CEO, don't come from our same background, LDS, Mormon to the core, wonderful, wonderful men, literally living, knocking on heaven's door. They're that good at people. Reached out to me and said, hey, we want to start a replication of Delancey Street in Utah. Can we meet? So they flew to Los Angeles. We met at LA Live, Fleming's restaurant. You know, LA Live is where the Lakers and the Clippers play. And we sat down for dinner at Fleming's, and I looked at both of them. I said, check this out. Don't either one of you say a word. Who in the hell are you? What's the genesis of thought behind this? What makes you think you can, and why would you want to? Who's first? I interviewed them. An hour later, when they were done telling me who they were, I knew I was in the presence of 2 of the greatest men I'd ever met in my entire life. A couple hours later, they said, are you willing to come to Utah and help us get this started? I said, I'll go to the moon if you don't quit in 6 months when it gets hard. We've now been here for 8.5 years. That's just kind of a skim over for my story and how we got to the Other Side Academy.
So you founded the Other Side Academy with this group of individuals that literally reached down because they saw the model that was happening in LA, and they said, we need to bring it here.
Yep. So Joseph Grenny, our chairman of the board, wrote, he's a New York Times bestselling author, Crucial Conversations, Crucial Accountability. Hell, here's his new one, Crucial Influence, right? Joseph Grenny. But he also wrote a book 20 years ago called The Influencer. And many people who are hearing this have read these books. The Influencer, he was going all over the world studying models, studying people who are influencing major change, age reduction, hospital infections. And everybody was pointing to Mimi Silbert at Delancey Street for recidivism, right? So he went and interviewed Mimi, and one of the chapters in the book, The Influencer, featured Delancey Street and Mimi Silbert. Joseph said, holy shit, I want this model in Utah someday. Fast forward, some of his kids found their way into drugs and into jail. And he finally said, if I can't win the battle, I'm going to get into the war. Got a cadre of community leaders, Tim Stay, a bunch of other community leaders. They went to San Francisco. They did the replication training at the San Francisco Delancey Street. 2 days later, they left and said, okay, we can do this. We can raise the money. But who in the hell is going to run it? They found me. And I'm not patting myself on the back.
They had already dedicated themselves, like literally in time and effort, to the model, and they just needed a leader. So you moved to Salt Lake City.
I moved to Salt Lake City.
Town.
Yeah.
Same problem.
When we were, oh gosh, it is. Yeah, the problem is bad everywhere. But when we were sitting at dinner, I said, okay, here's the problem. I can't do it by myself. They go, you know other people? I said, Tim, Joseph, I was in Delancey Street for 8.5 years. I ran the facility for 5 years. Of course I know other people. Give me a couple days, I'll call you back. So I come back to Utah. I call some of my friends in Delancey Street. I called Alan. I called Lola. I called Steve, Chris, Sharon, all of which I raised in Delancey Street. And when I called them and told them what I was doing, when are we leaving? Alan says, when are we leaving? Lola says, let me talk to my family. I said, okay, Lola, call me on Sunday. They all said basically, when are we leaving? And me, Alan, and Lola came to Utah at the same time and lived in our little mansion by ourselves until we started getting students. Then Steve came on board, Chris and Sharon came on board, and that's how we got it started. We had a lot of experience both in drug use, homelessness, jails, prisons, but most importantly, everybody I mentioned were in Delancey Street for at least 6 years each. Chris and Sharon, 6 years. Alan, 5.5, 6 years. Lola and Steve, 5 or 6 years each. Myself, 8. So we had like 50 years of TC experience. And they came on board, and we've been running since 2015. We even scaled the model 4 years ago, 4 years ago into Denver. We have Site 2, and Lola Strong and Steve Strong are running that facility. Lola's the managing director. And I'll never forget Lola when she got to Delancey Street. Man, was she a mess, just like me. And I remember raising her, and I used to call her Little Grasshopper. She was learning. And she is just a firecracker of a woman and doing one hell of a job in Denver running that facility. So we have 2 of them now in the country.
So for those of you that don't know, I went on your website and I saw the mansion, and to me, I love I love that you have this beautiful home that you are able to do this in, because it looks like kind of this redemptive setting in a way for people that wouldn't expect to otherwise live in a mansion. It's really amazing. And tell me how many people have gone through the program in Salt Lake City.
Well, I've got a couple hundred graduates now, and it took us a few years to get graduates out the pipeline because we're so long, right? So we have, I don't even know what the number is. We have a couple hundred graduates and many more on the way. I currently have about 140 people living on property. Come on, walk with me. You ready? Show you something. So that right there is my org chart, right?
It's very large.
Yes.
Look at all those people.
That's us. That's the Other Side Academy, right? We're an academy. Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, master student. Freshman,
Okay,
you got
they're
here,
all different colors.
yeah. Freshman, registered freshman. Freshman, you got here today. You've been here for, a day to 4 months. Sophomore, anywhere from 3 or 4 months to 6 or 7 months. Junior, 8 or 9 months to 15 months. Then you're a senior. All the gray that you see, right? The gray, those are master students. Those are people that are staying beyond their 2 years, like I did, right? I said 8. They've opted to stay longer. When was the last time you met a drug addict that wasn't at the door on day 29, waiting for day 30 to run back out to chase them in? 65% of my students asked to stay a 3rd year. It's incredible. So I'm going to go down real quick. We are a 30-month commitment's what it takes to come in, right? 2.5-year program. We're completely free. We take no money from the government, nothing from the city, the county, the state, the federal government, rich mommy and daddy, Medicaid, insurance, nothing. You walk through our front door. You take a seat right there on that bench. Mo, would you take a seat on that bench? You take a seat right there on that bench. Then you ask for an interview, right? That's Mo. He's a Delancey Street graduate too. He helps run our tiny home village that I'll share with you here shortly. You sit on that bench and you ask for an interview. We'll take you right in here to that room. You'll sit in that chair right there. We'll interview you. If we accept you, you start today. You need nothing. That day. While you're sitting there, you're looking at that. Those are our beliefs. And this bench right here is strategically placed right by our front door.
Dave, read us those beliefs.
I'd be happy to. Everybody in the world needs to live by these. You ready? You alone can do it, but you can't do it alone. Make and keep promises. Self-reliance, there is no free lunch. Impeccable honesty. Act as if until you become. Embrace humility. Each one, teach one. When A helps B, A gets better. I just add those on there, right? 200% accountability. I'm 100% accountable for me, and I'm 100% accountable for you. I'm not accountable to the decisions you make, but if you do something and I see it, I'm 100% accountable to say something. Forgiveness. Boundaries, very important. We are faith-friendly and pride in work. And the foundation to all of that is love. If you love people, you have expectations of them. If you love people, you tell them the truth. Period. We don't sugarcoat anything. So when you're sitting on that bench,
and that's on your website, right? Those statements of
Yep.
values.
Yep.
That's
Okay, now you ready?
fantastic. Yep,
Are you sitting?
I'm sitting.
Okay. Back to my org chart. This is very, very important. As I mentioned, I know I'm bouncing around, so I hope it doesn't ruin the video. As I mentioned, no money from the government. We have our own social enterprises that generate our revenue. We have a moving company called The Other Side Movers. And later on, Google The Other Side Movers, Salt Lake City. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds upon hundreds of 5-star reviews. Yelp, Google reviews. When was the last time you used a moving company and you gave them a 1-star review? In 2018, we won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneurs of the Year in the state of Utah with a moving company ran by ex-felons and ex-drug addicts. We kicked the shit out of Utah's elite, right? While they're taking the top 2%, we do it with the bottom 2%. See those ribbons right there? That's all best of state. The other side, vocational training, substance abuse treatment, adult education, another adult education, vocational training, humanitarian operation.
Those are framed
medals.
Medals, and there's 6 of them on the wall.
Yep.
For those of us that don't see the video. Yeah.
2 weeks ago, we were at a hall, and we won Best of Salt Lake Moving Company, Best of Salt Lake Thrift Boutiques, and for the one that touched me the most was Best Nonprofit in Salt Lake. We are ran by ex-felons and ex-drug addicts, and we win Best of State, Best of City, and I'll explain to you shortly why. So our moving company, right? We have 2 thrift boutiques. When you think thrift store, you think Goodwill DI. Think Macy's or Nordstrom's. They're that nice. About 25,000 square foot showrooms. Then we have food service. We take care of all our own food. Corporate development, we're a nonprofit. They call to get donations of things in kind donations. Property management, that's our construction company. Storage warehouse. So we have a moving company. People who move usually have things they want to donate, hence our thrift store. People who move usually have things they need to store, hence our storage facility. Those 4 social enterprises, moving company, thrift boutique, construction, and warehouse, will generate about $8.5 million this year. In month 17 of our existence, we were completely self-sustaining, covering all of our operational costs. If we weren't in growth mode, expanding to other cities, buying other properties, we would never have to reach out to our donors and ask for help. But when we do now, Dan, we tell them, because right now we have 6 properties here on the corner and we have the church across the street under contract because it's decommissioned. We reach out to our donors and tell them we're expanding to build more capacity. They say, how much do you need? It is incredible what we've been able to do. So with all that said, there's all this, right? These are our freshmen, brand new. Here's the important part. There's not another organization in the world that does this. So anybody watching, I challenge you to find it. You won't. I've been all over the world. It doesn't exist. When you're no longer a student and you're getting ready to graduate, right? The day you graduate, I have a full-time job for you. These are just some of the companies that hire our graduates. The Other Side Academy, True Religion, Pancake and Steakhouse, Rapid Response Heating and Air, Soul Recovery Academy, The Other Side Village, Tier League Cabinets, huge general contractors, huge contractor here in Utah. Larry H. Miller Lexus, $3 billion automobile conglomerate. Martinez Construction, Grand America Hotel. They did not hire felons ever until we partnered with them. That's just to name a few. The day you graduate, I have a full-time job. You go from this structured environment into that one. Anywhere from $17 to $30 an hour, depending on your skill set. We don't put you on public transportation. I hand you the keys to a vehicle. You use this vehicle to go to and from work. In Delancey Street, you'd have to be on public transportation or you're walking the streets. Very bad for our students. I've been doing this for the past 5 years and haven't had one single problem of people going to and from work. Not one. While they're working, they go across the street to graduate housing. We have some apartments right across the street connected to the community, right? Go to graduate housing. You're required to stay in graduate housing for a minimum of a year while you're working full-time, so you stay connected to the community. When you go to graduate housing, if you only stayed with us for 2 years, you're required to go through 1 year financial literacy classes in the evenings, a couple times a week, right? Most of it's online. At the end of that year, you're required to have saved $5,000, right? We match it dollar for dollar. Now, you've been with us 2 years as a student, 1 year as a graduate. You've had your job for a year. You've already bought your car, got your phone, saved $5,000. We match it dollar for dollar. Now you have a minimum of 10,000 to go rent your place. If you stayed with us for 3 years as a student, that's the gray. Remember, 3 years or longer. These are the master students. Get you a job, go to graduate housing, stay for a year. Now you've been with the organization for 4. You save 5,000, we match it 2 to 1. Now you're going to graduate, but with us for 4 years, you have a minimum of 15,000. The hardest thing for us to do was find people to rent to our graduates. So I had some people make phone calls, and we called all over the valley to property management companies, apartment owners, had them here, fed them lunch, introduced them to the students, introduced them to the organization. Now, every single graduate can go to those apartments, fill out an application, and they'll call me and say, Dave, John Doe is here. Is he a graduate? Yep. Good standing? Yep. They rent to him. Job, housing, savings, everything. That back end piece, Delancey Street saved my life, but they didn't do that. The last 90 days in Delancey Street, you went out and you got a job. Might take you a month to find it. Got a criminal record, you're walking down the street. Get that job, turn your money into finance for the next 2 months. When you graduate, they keep half, you get half. If I made $3,000, I'm leaving with $1,500. What do you think my odds of success are going to be? Here, we don't need it. You do. You keep it all. We set you up for success. There's not another organization in the world, I promise you, that does what we do. It doesn't exist.
Okay, Dave. So for those that are listening, the natural question will be, well, how do I bring this to my town, my community? I'm sitting here thinking I need this and we need this in Reading, like we need the sewage system and the electrical grid. I mean, like it's that important of a utility to serve the community. Tell us about that, and also tell us how people can support you if you need support, or other organizations that are like yours, just getting going or whatever. Just how do they engage with you, Dave?
So my email is Dave at theothersideacademy.com. One word, Dave at theothersideacademy.com. It's very difficult to replicate, because what you can't do is go to Berkeley and go, hey, all you graduates, come on, we're starting a therapeutic community. It'll fail on itself. You can't run it. A doctor can't run it. A whole cadre of therapists can't run it. Will eat you up and spit you out. You have to find people that were long-term drug addicts, lived on the streets, been to jail, been to prison, been to a therapeutic community, and had leadership roles to understand how to manage this population. Just imagine, my average student's been arrested 25.6 times. No doctor, no therapist, and no counselor on the face of the planet. And I know people get offended when I say that. They get offended because they know it's true, and they think that their degree makes it where they can. They can't. It's very...
They got the wrong degree for this particular element.
Right. Well,
you're giving out PhDs.
Right. And I've got a PhD, right?
Yeah.
While they were all going to Penn State, I was going to the state pen. I learned things that college can't teach you about this population. Now, they think they know. They don't. They simply do not. And right now in this country, the current model is broken. So I want to get to your question, but I don't want to forget this piece. When I say the current model is broken, the reason why I say that is some of the best human beings on the face of the planet that I know work in treatment facilities, but the model's broken. They're based on funding models, not helping models. They only have us for 30, 60, or 90 days. And the first question they ask you when you get there is what? How much money do you have? I don't have any. Go die. If you go to a treatment facility and you can't pay for it, you can't stay, right? If you go to a treatment facility and you can pay for it, it's not your money. Mom and dad just mortgaged their house for the 7th time. They've got $18,000 left to their name. It's a $30,000 program, but they'll take it. And when do you have to leave?
When it's done.
Runs out. What do you think the odds are that you're done the day the money runs out? The model's broken, and I say it in this country because it's true. I believe we're killing more people than we're helping because we're putting them in these programs over and over and over to get out OD, over and over and over, get out OD. It's crazy. right, what we're doing. And there's no science anywhere. I challenge everybody listening. The science doesn't exist that says 30, 60, or 90 days is the optimal amount of time for a drug addict felon. It doesn't exist. What the science does say is the dosage effect. The longer you're in treatment, the better your odds of success. But the government has gotten in and said, no, 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 don't do it in a year. You can do it in 6 months. You can serve more people. No, do it in 90 days. You can serve more people. Geez, do it in 30. Can you imagine how many people go through? Who gives a shit? I don't care if 10,000 people come through if only 6 stay sober. I'd rather 6 come through and all 6 stay sober, because that other that other 9,000 are going to go back out there and die. You've got to
So
be.
Dave, how do I bring it to Reading? How do I do this? How do I hire one of your graduates? How do we talk one of your graduates to come to Reading to set up a house?
So we have 2 facilities now. I'm helping an organization. We are helping an organization in Philadelphia called Soul Recovery Academy. I sent one of my 3-year graduates there to be their house manager. We realize we don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to be in every city that needs us, because every city needs us. So what we are doing now is I've met people all over the country. We are now good friends. I mean, literally friends. And we're helping them become better at what they're doing. Harvest Academy in Iowa. Tim Kruger, their CEO, came and stayed with us for a couple of years. We even hired him for a short period of time as our COO. Then he started his own called Harvest Academy in Iowa. And I'm on the phone with their manager all the time, coaching them through different processes, right? So we have 2 of them that we're really parenting. And many others, Thompson House of Hope here, they were just here a couple of days ago. We were meeting, helping them get better at what they're doing. We want to be a learning hospital, a teaching hospital. I've got people coming from I just had people from Shasta come here, Shasta, California, not far from you. Come and spend a few days.
Really?
Yes.
Well, they must have been from Reading.
Yeah, they are from Reading. Shasta Strive. That's the name
Shasta Strive.
That's the name of the organization that came for the second time. I just had an organization from Oregon, Cottage Grove, come also and spend a few days. We do immersion trainings here with other organizations. Alabama was just here. Arizona's on the way. That's just to name a few. I get people from all over the country that want to come learn and ask the same question. How do we get this started? I'm going to tell you something. It's nearly impossible. Raising the money is easy. Finding the property is easy. Raising millions is easy. Finding the leadership is like a needle in a haystack. Because just because you're clean and sober does not mean you have what it takes to manage this population. You have to, and all of my staff, are you ready for this? This is what it takes. See all that orange up there? Dave Durocher, Executive Director, Chris, Sharon, Robert, Delancey Street graduates. All the other orange are my staff members. Full-time salaries, 401k, you name it, right? Full-time staff members. They're homegrown. We live on property. In order to make this work and be as efficacious as we are, all other programs, you punch in at 8 o'clock in the morning, the counselor punches out at 5 in the evening. Then they leave the house of drug addicts to somebody with 90 days of sobriety. My staff lives on property. We live here 24/7. I've got about 20 staff members. We're here every day, all day. The reason why that works is because if you're a parent, mom and dad, and your kids are 8, 10, and 12, and you decide to stop coming home, what do your kids do? Whatever the hell they want. Welcome to this population, not just here, but everywhere else. We live here with them. We're raising these adults through this maturation process. It's critical to live on property. So you've got to find people that have lived on the streets, been in jail, been in prison, been a drug addict, been through a therapeutic community, and are willing to move in and live on property. That's the difficult piece.
You know, like in America and other places, I guess we all like to see the fast solution and say, just give it to me. And so part of this is that this is well earned, long in coming, not quick to come. But the good news is that that the Other Side Academy exists, that you are spreading the story and setting up shops when it's appropriate to set them up. And it works right. Dave, we're going to close off here, but I'm going to ask you, does character matter, in your opinion, in the course of the Other Side Academy and its development?
Character is absolutely everything. That is the key component to it all. If we digress to an hour ago, reputation, all of us think we have a reputation. It is built on doing the wrong thing. Character is built on doing the right thing. If you leave this place, a graduate, and you've got integrity and you've got a character, you will succeed in life. Character is the key. It is the secret sauce to develop character, to do the right thing no matter what, to be good, to be decent, to help other people. Character is everything, Dan. Everything. That's what we're teaching our students.
I know, and it's right in those statements in your foyer there that you showed us. It all leads in that direction. We invest on the basis of integrity, responsibility, forgiveness, and compassion are the four character habits that have been universally identified. I appreciate your time. I'm so inspired. I'm grateful that you exist. I think that we need to create a new PhD level kind of certification, the Hard Knocks PhD, and it's worth a lot of money in my mind because it can come into communities and literally transform them done right. So
whether you're in California or whether you're in New York or someplace in between, the most important thing you can take from this talk today, from this podcast, is I've got people from about 10 different states now represented. My goal is to have a national presence. If you know somebody who needs help, I don't care where they're at in the country, you call us, we'll interview them over the phone. If we accept them, we ask the families to get them here, but more times than not, the families can't get them here and they've already burned that bridge. I will pay to get them here. We'll interview them over the phone. We'll get them here. It's free. Doesn't matter where you're at in the country. Know that we're here, the Other Side Academy Salt Lake and the Other Side Academy Denver. Our goal is just to save lives. So if you know people, and everybody does, everybody is affected by drug addiction and criminal behavior. Somebody, immediate family, friends, neighbors, whatever it is, just know that we're here and willing to help.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave.